You just spent $3,000 on a workstation that is technically no faster than its predecessor at the one thing that actually matters for your workflow. It's a sobering realization, right? It usually hits you about 48 hours after the initial dopamine hit of the unboxing wears off. You've got the latest chassis, the brilliant high refresh display, that sleek industrial design that screams productivity. Yet when you actually put the hammer down, the silence from your cooling fans isn't a sign of efficiency. It's the sound of a ceiling being reached. I think you and we've both fallen for the trap. We've been conditioned by decades of Moore's Law to expect that every new cycle brings a bloody massive leap in performance. We see those charts during the keynote, the bars going up and to the right, and we just assume that translates to our daily lives. But look closer at those graphs. Notice the fine print. They're comparing their latest flagship to a 3-year-old mid-range chip, or they're measuring a hyper-specific workload that has absolutely zero relevance to what you actually do. The truth is, quite literally, staring us in the face. Whilst the marketing departments are busy naming their latest architecture something evocative, the engineers are fighting a war against physics, and they're slowly losing. The silicon inside your Pro machine is gasping for air, not because of the cooling, but because we've reached the limits of how many transistors we can cram into a single square millimeter without the whole thing turning into a space heater. It's a performance paradox, really. We're paying more for the privilege of staying in the same place. We're tech enthusiasts caught in a cycle of diminishing returns, buying kit that feels remarkably similar to the gear we just replaced. It's a daunting reality for anyone who relies on these tools to make a living. Look, the gear is getting more expensive. The industrial design is getting cleaner. But the actual heart of the machine is starting to beat at a rhythm we've seen before. We are hitting the silicon ceiling. And the cracks are starting to show. Look, to understand how we got here, we have to look at the theater. Every single autumn, you sit through the same polished ritual. A CEO stands on a stage, usually in front of a bloody massive LED screen, and points to a graph where the line goes up at a perfect 45-degree angle. They promise 20% better performance here, 3% more efficiency there. It's a brilliant bit of marketing, really, Intel, AMD, and Apple have mastered the art of selling you a dream. They've convinced us that as long as those bars keep moving to the right, progress is linear, infinite, and quite literally inevitable. I've watched enough of these keynotes to spot the patterns. This is like revolutionary architecture, or a massive leap forward, but carefully hiding the fine print in the bottom corner of the slide. You see, they want you to believe that shrinking the transistor from 5 nanometers to 3 guaranteed path towards some kind of DJ godhood. And it's like magic, right? If you look past the glossy renders of the silicon wafer, you start to see the decimal collision. They are fighting a war against physics, but they are quite literally music.
Look, the industry has done a bloody massive job of conditioning us to equate smaller with better, without once asking what happens when you reach the edge of the map. We celebrate the shrinking of these components as if it's just another software update. But on the wafer, things are getting daunting. We're reaching a point where the very electrons we're trying to control are starting to behave in ways that, well, defy common sense. These companies are selling us a future that assumes the laws of the universe will just move out of the way for their next quarterly earnings report. They show you the charts, they show you the benchmarks, and they show you the sleek new industrial design. It's all meant to distract you from the fact that the actual heart of the machine is reaching a breaking point. But here's the thing. There was one detail everyone missed in the last round of announcements. A tiny detail that reveals the facade is about to crumble entirely. See, that detail, it's the physical limit of the materials themselves. I want to talk to you about something engineers call the power wall. For decades, we lived by the grace of Moore's Law, where every 2 years, your devices got twice as fast, and you barely had to think about why. But as we shrink transistors down to the 3 nanometer scale, well, we're moving out of the realm of traditional engineering and into something far more haunting. At this scale, the walls of a transistor are only a few atoms thick. This is where we encounter quantum tunneling. Imagine you have a gate designed to stop a marble. In our normal world, the marble hits the gate and stops. But in the quantum world, if that gate is thin enough, the marble, or in this case the electron, quite literally teleports to the other side. The wall is still there. It isn't broken. But the electron just ignores it. Look, when your electrons start behaving like ghosts, you lose control. The chip starts leaking power everywhere, generating massive amounts of heat without actually doing any extra work. This is the power wall. We can't make the transistors flick on and off any faster, because if we do, the whole thing effectively melts. So, if the chips can't actually get faster, why do the benchmarks keep going up? Well, it's a brilliant bit of architectural sleight of hand. Manufacturers have realized they can't make the cars go faster than 60 miles per hour anymore. So, instead of building a faster engine, they're just adding more lanes to the highway. This is why every new chip announcement is obsessed with core counts and neural engines. They're just packing more and more specialized hardware into the same space to handle specific tasks. You aren't getting a faster machine, you're just getting a bigger parking lot. It's a massive expansion of the infrastructure to hide the fact that the actual top speed of our technology has plateaued. We are being sold the illusion of progress, whilst the fundamental heart of the computer is desperately gasping for air. But look, the real concern isn't just that your laptop isn't getting faster. The real concern is what happens when this architectural trickery finally runs out of space. Because as it turns out, there is one part of the chip they aren't telling you about. A section that is being kept dark on purpose.
That dark silicon, it is a physical manifestation of a limit we simply cannot cross. But look, there is a second, perhaps more cynical reason your brand new machine feels like it is running through waist-deep mud. See, whilst engineers at Intel and TSMC are fighting the literal laws of physics to squeeze out a 5% performance gain, software developers? Well, they have spent the last decade getting lazy. I have watched this play out across the entire industry. They have been subsidized by the hardware cycle. For years, the unspoken rule of Silicon Valley has been simple. Why spend 6 months optimizing code when you can just wait for the next chip to brute force it? I call this the efficiency regression. You see, in the early days of computing, when resources were scarce, programmers treated every single byte like gold. Today, that discipline is a forgotten art. We have entered an era where your messaging app is quite literally a full-blown web browser running in the background. Think about it. You buy a laptop with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and before you've even opened a single project, half of that memory is already being devoured by background processes that offer you, what? Almost zero utility. The culprit is often frameworks like Electron. Now, it is brilliant for developers because it lets them write code once and deploy it everywhere, but it is an absolute disaster for your hardware. I mean, it is the equivalent of buying a high-performance sports car just to haul a trailer full of wet cement. Your CPU is working harder than ever, but none of that power is going toward your actual work. It's all being burnt away by layers of unoptimized abstraction. This is the dirty secret of consumer tech evolution. We are not actually moving forward, we are just wanting faster to stay in the exact same place. I believe we are being sold the dream of a faster future, whilst the software we use every day is quietly anchoring us to the past. It is a bloody, massive bloatware burden that we have been conditioned to accept as progress, right? We have let the hardware do the heavy lifting for so long that we have forgotten how to build lean, efficient systems. But here's the thing. That is not even the craziest part. Because while the software gets heavier and the silicon ceiling gets lower, there is one final factor that is about to turn this stagnation into a full-blown crisis.
However, to understand that, we have to look at what happens when the money starts to run out. The money starts to run out the very moment you stop buying. And look, you stop buying when the device in your pocket or on your desk still works perfectly 3 years later. This is the existential nightmare for Silicon Valley. See, if the hardware can no longer provide a genuine leap in performance, well, then the industry has to manufacture a reason for you to feel like your current machine is obsolete. I call this the forced upgrade cycle. It is a subtle, calculated manipulation of the software environment. Think of it like this. You have a perfectly functional car that can comfortably hit 80 miles per hour. But every year, the manufacturer comes by and adds a heavy, useless lead weight to the truck. Suddenly, your car struggles to hit 60. You are then told that the new model, which comes with a slightly better engine but no lead weight, is a revolutionary leap forward.
In the professional space, this is even more egregious. I mean, I am seeing creative suites and production tools being updated with features that sound impressive in a keynote. Things like AI upscaling or automated background removal. But whilst these could run on older silicon with a bit of optimization, they are often artificially locked or intentionally poorly coded for older architectures. You see, it is not that your processor cannot handle the task, right? It is that the software is being used as a throttle to make you feel the age of your machine. This 12-month refresh cycle, it is no longer about innovation. It is about maintaining a growth curve on a spreadsheet. We are being sold a promise of progress, whilst being handed a bill for artificial limitations. It is a brilliant strategy for the shareholders, sure. But for those of us who actually rely on these tools to get work done, it is a bloody massive insult. But even this software-driven obsolescence has a limit. There is a point where you cannot hide the lack of progress anymore. And that is when the industry turns to its most desperate tactic yet. And it is something that involves the very fabric of how we define what a computer actually is. To authoritative, to understand where we are being led, we have to look at the one place where hardware power doesn't matter at all. Because you do not even own it. We've been conditioned to believe that a more expensive box on your desk, or a thinner slab in your pocket, equals progress. But look, quite literally, we are hitting a physical wall. Atoms do not care about marketing budgets, and they certainly don't care about quarterly earnings reports. The silicon ceiling isn't just an engineering hurdle, it's a paradigm shift that most of us are choosing to ignore, whilst we reach for our credit cards. For decades, you and I, we relied on Moore's law to do the heavy lifting. He would buy a machine, wait 3 years, and the next one would be twice as fast, simply because the transistors got smaller. Slightly dismissive, it was effortless. But now, those transistors are so minuscule that we're fighting the laws of physics itself. You see, when you get down to 3 nanometers, electrons start to jump gates where they shouldn't. It's called quantum tunneling. And it means the old way of just making things smaller is, well, effectively dead. This is why the annual refresh cycle has become such a bloody massive insult to our intelligence. I mean, you're being sold revolutionary upgrades that are, in reality, just factory overclocks with a slightly shinier heatsink. It's a brilliant bit of sleight of hand, really. They give you a 5% performance bump, wrap it in a new marketing term, and expect you to fork over another $1,000. It's daunting to realize that we're essentially paying for the same engine with a different coat of paint every single year. Look, if you and I want to see real innovation again, we have to stop being seduced by the new and start demanding the optimized. The era of brute force computing is over. The future isn't about how many gigahertz we can cram into a chip whilst it tries to melt through your motherboard. It's about smarter code. It's about software that actually respects the hardware it runs on, rather than wasting cycles of telemetry and unoptimized bloat. We have to stop buying into the 12-month cycle. We need to start supporting architectures that prioritize longevity and efficiency over deceptive benchmarks.
Our future isn't in faster chips, but in smarter craftsmanship. I'll leave you with a final thought. Stop chasing the clock speed and start demanding the quality we were promised. It's time to stop paying for the parking lot and start demanding a better engine. What about you? Are you still chasing the latest spec sheet? Or have you realized the game is rigged? Let me know in the comments if you're holding on to your gear longer these days. If you found this analysis useful, you might want to stick around. There is a lot more to uncover about where our tech is really heading.